All right, so I am thrilled to be speaking with Alana Muello, who's been the intern for CAPI this past semester and has been working with the greenhouse gas emissions inventory for the town of Amenia and the climate action plan. So just some background, we've been working on this process now since January of this year, and the first step was to complete the inventory, and then the second step was to model out emissions reductions based on the inventory in order to determine what strategies might make sense for the climate action plan. So, Alana, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe what you're going to be sharing with us is just this, the work around the inventory results and the reduction measure modeling and the initial draft of the climate action plan. Is that right?
Oh, exactly. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, then I'll let you jump right in.
Great. Thank you. Hi, I'm Alana. I've been working on Amenia's climate action plan over the course of the fall, and I'm excited to be sharing all that I've been working on with you. Uh, just to start, um, this is a brief kind of table of contents of what we're going to be going over, including an executive summary of the document. This includes some background on what a climate action plan is, major goals and visions for the town overall, and just a brief summary of what the greenhouse gas inventory kind of produced and how we're using that to create different strategies.
So it
Okay.
looks like you've input the results from the inventory from Amenia specifically into the executive summary. Is that right?
Exactly, yes.
Great.
Okay. And this introduction is a brief interview to why this sort of work is important. And a lot of this information has come from the ICLEI template itself. So it's more broad and it's more applicable to kind of towns across the country. But moving further into the presentation, some of it is more tailored towards Armenia.
So it sounds like this could be updated, but it is template language from ICLEI that could stand as it is as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, this moves into the purpose, scope, and process behind the climate action plan. This is also generally very broad information. Um, some of it is tailored towards Armenia, including the reduction goals of New York State, and the process specifically. This is something that I wasn't entirely sure how to fill in myself. I think it's going to be kind of next steps moving forward. I can, of course, go in and kind of input what I did, but this is more of something kind of the next couple of months.
So
Uh,
here the team should really think about um, what next steps are and outline that according to an overall strategic plan. Is that right?
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And that can be along the lines of what the template has provided. I just wasn't sure what the next steps with stakeholder engagement and outreach to the community specifically would look like.
Yeah, I think because Amenia has already posted the greenhouse gas inventory report to their website,
Mhm.
really the next step are the stakeholder engagement meetings and running the recommended strategies by the key stakeholders. But we can talk a little bit more about that later.
Sure. Okay. And then here are the vision statements and objectives for this climate action plan. These are tailored towards Armenia. They are four statements that I thought were applicable to the strategies that I chose and the results of the greenhouse gas inventory. And that applies up here. And then down here, these are also goals that align with the strategies that I chose and the greenhouse gas inventory. So they'll be described a little bit more further on.
Great. And these vision statements are supposed to be very broad in general so that the strategies and objectives underneath the vision statements align with the vision statement.
Okay, and this background is very broad from the template. It's trying to go into what climate change is and how it's going to affect us broadly and more specifically. So this references the appendix down below, which has much more information about climate change in general. So it includes like different maps, different charts, and goes really in depth about what this means.
Great. And obviously this photo needs to be updated for Amenia, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then this is a comparison to the state and local goals. They are fairly similar. The only difference here is that these are what we modeled in ClearPath because they take into account the changes that have already been made to the grid since 1990 when these goals were set. Uh, is that
Yep, that's right. And we have some wording around that, which we can stick in here too, just that explains why these numbers have gone down. So I can add that in as well.
sure? And these are in addition to reducing emissions, there are other co-benefits to the strategies that we'll be discussing. These include saving money, enhancing resource security, creating jobs, improving public health, and enhancing frontline communities. These are generally applicable to climate action plans everywhere, but are specifically applied to different strategies. So not all of them are used for every strategy, and they're also used kind of in different amounts depending on the situation. Okay, this goes further into climate equity and more frontline community information with the media specifically. This is this is definitely able to be modified and changed based on Amenia specifically. So as the strategies kind of are developed, this can be updated. And just like with your own personal knowledge.
Yeah, I think because this is a government operations greenhouse gas inventory, some of this detail doesn't need to be as in-depth as perhaps it would for like a community climate action plan. So, you know, just to kind of keep in mind as you think about, or as whoever updates this plan should keep in mind, because it doesn't necessarily need to be that in-depth from a climate smart communities program perspective.
Yes. Yeah, it's a much more optional section than others. This goes into Amenia specifically, their inventory results. It does have some general language about what an inventory is, but it specifically includes the Amenia's inventory as it goes. This includes the metric tons of carbon dioxide emitted and specific charts from ClearPath showing the general inventory results. So as you can see here, solid waste is a pretty high contributor. And because it was so large, we decided to also show charts that subtract it, just so you're able to see more clearly more manageable sectors of improvement.
And these can be found in ClearPath, right?
They are, yes.
Right.
Okay, and this goes into projected growth over the next couple of years. It goes specifically to 2030, and this is showing a more business as usual sort of approach, which means that if if nothing changes, how will greenhouse gas emissions be modified just based off of population changes, the grid decarbonization, and changes to vehicle efficiency? Um, so this is specifically applicable to Amenia and its inventory results. Um, these charts here, and here were the ones that were produced. Once again, they include and exclude solid waste, so you can see the picture a little bit clearer.
What percentage is solid waste? Was it 95 or so?
Like 91%-ish.
91. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then we move into mitigation and strategy focus. This, once again, uses general language, but this is directly applicable to Amenia and describes the strategies and the sectors that I chose to focus on. Okay, and these are general, it's a general key for the symbols that will be used later. These are for the co-benefits, and this is for emission reduction potential. Okay, and this moves into the main objectives. Each sector had objectives and then strategies that fell under the objectives. And they are everything in the tables is directly applicable to Amenia. And they will be talked about more in depth a little bit later on in the plan.
So this is really the meat of the plan, and I know you put a lot of thought into this, Alana. So it would be good at you know, at some point to talk a little bit more in depth about, why these were chosen and what you kind of considered, what were the criteria for choosing these recommended strategies.
Of course, yeah. There's a table a little bit later that has kind of more information.
Perfect.
There. Okay, so that kind of continues on down here, showing main co-benefits, reduction potential for the different strategies in the 3 top sectors, and then it moves into different emission reduction scenarios. Fix that. And this shows what will happen if you combine different strategies together, how emissions will change altogether. Once again, it shows with and without solid waste. This is one such emission scenario that shows what will happen if you install solar panels on half of the landfill, install heat pumps in town hall, and replace 3 gasoline pickup trucks with electric options. And as you can see, it's a pretty impressive decline.
It is, and I can see that it gets the town of Amenia way below the CLCPA goal. So
It does.
so this is a pretty aggressive forecast. Interesting.
Yes. Then it moves into a monitoring plan for how this is going to be kind of looked over. This is pretty general and can be modified more specifically to Amenia's needs. This is just what was kind of recommended through the template. Okay. And then the appendix is where a lot of the specific information is held. This is a spot where you can input the greenhouse gas inventory. This could be in the form of like a reference link, or you could copy and paste the entire thing and put it here. Okay.
Yeah,
And then,
even though it's a little repetitive, I think the recommendation is to cut and paste the whole thing in here because it there's so much work that went into that, and it makes some of these recommendations more, it clarifies why these recommendations are in the plan itself.
okay, thank you. And then this goes further into the strategies and their specific details. So for buildings and facilities, one main objective was to increase energy efficiency in government buildings. And the primary strategy under this objective was to upgrade HVAC equipment, specifically installing heat pumps in town hall. Doing this significantly reduces overall emissions in the sector and brings Amenia down to the 2030 CLCPA goal. There's already a project going on to install heat pumps in the town gym. This uses 6 to 7 different grants and has almost $100,000 available for installation and purchase. For this project, next steps include assessing electricity and seeing if upgrades are necessary. So taking this process and applying it to town hall in the future would be a great way to significantly reduce emissions.
And I know Amenia has very few buildings, but you chose town hall because that had the highest emissions.
It did, yes.
Yeah.
And in the greenhouse gas inventory, it broke down where the different fuel types and how each building contributed to the overall emissions. And since town hall uses fuel oil, it was significantly, it was a much bigger contributor than the other buildings. Moving on, conducting energy audits in the different facilities is important for gaining a baseline understanding of energy use and for identifying areas of improvement in these different buildings. An audit is already underway, or it was a month or 2 ago, and half of the deposit has already been paid. So this strategy by itself doesn't automatically reduce emissions, but the recommendations from it can, and just having the knowledge itself is important for understanding emissions as a whole. Okay. And then reassessing and maintaining, kind of going along with this, but reassessing and maintaining the current heating system is an important way to reduce emissions. Amenia has a state-of-the-art heating system with a computer monitoring device, but it has been experiencing functional issues, such as unnecessarily heating different rooms at points and at lengths that they don't need to be heated. So bringing back the original installers to reassess this and fix the issue will help reduce all sorts of electricity costs. And if possible, expanding the system to other town buildings could be helpful.
Seems very sensible.
Okay. And finally, just installing light occupancy sensors to reduce unnecessary electricity usage. This is a less intense option compared to ones above, but it's a pretty low risk way. And then moving on to the vehicle fleet, this had two main objectives, one to reduce mileage driven and another to increase the efficiency of the fleet. I recognize that the vehicles, First Armenia only has 14 vehicles in the vehicle fleet, and that they are under the highway department specifically. So these are recommendations to be taken as more like collaborative suggestions. Okay. First, just implementing a right size vehicle fleet policy to help eliminate unnecessary vehicles while Armenia's fleet. This might not be as applicable to the fleet as it stands because it's not as large as others, but having the policy in place is good practice for the future. And any modification to the fleet because of its size would have a large impact on overall emissions.
And there's template language available for that policy, so that can be, yep.
Conducting a fleet inventory allows the media to make educated decisions about its fleet and provides necessary information for getting climate smart community grant opportunities. So it's a good baseline to have. Implementing a fleet efficiency policy to prioritize electric vehicle purchases is helpful for the future. These vehicles are more efficient and they will in the future help reduce emissions. Updating the comp plan specifically with this recommendation is something that could be useful.
And again, template language available there that can be leveraged. This is the efficiency policy and the green fleets policies are very popular actions or strategies that most municipalities are undertaking. So, and it's partly because having this policy can really help in terms of actually implementing these actions down the road.
Mm-hmm. And going along with that, replacing traditional vehicles with advanced vehicles. Diesel trucks represent the majority of Armenia's fleet emissions. And with pickup trucks are making up the rest. So any change to either of these kind of categories would have a really strong impact on the vehicle fleet sector as a whole. While this is expensive at the moment, just in combination with the fleet efficiency policy moving forward over time, these two things would have a big impact on reducing emissions. And going along with that, installing EV infrastructure is another important strategy. The town is already planning to install a charging point in downtown, which is helpful for kind of enabling EV purchases in the future. Already having this infrastructure is very helpful.
And again, lots of grant funding available for this, as well as for EV school buses and advanced vehicles. And even there's state grants, but there's also grants through the utility companies, and even some private companies are offering to help with this. If a grant is funded, they'll provide their services for free. So
yes. And moving into solid waste, this category was broken into increasing recycling and then other government initiatives and managing land use to reduce emissions. To increase recycling, implementing some sort of metal recycling program could be helpful. This is a pretty low cost, low risk strategy. It simply involves having a collection point for people to bring in metal to be disposed of properly. And a volunteer is then able to recycle that metal and receive some sort of compensation for it. Beginning a waste reduction campaign kind of goes along those lines of a low cost strategy to help increase awareness and consciousness towards disposal.
And again, because this plan only pertains to government operations, these are actions that only pertain to government employees, right? So staff or waste reduction campaign and providing the free dumpsters at the town hall, et cetera, right? These are specific. I think the metal recycling becomes, I probably is a little overlap with community, if you're allowing community residents to recycle the metal as well, but of course it would be a government-run program, so I guess that's why you included it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and implementing some sort of environmentally friendly purchasing policy, such as using the Green New York database to, when you're looking to purchase new items, is another strategy. Armenia is not required to purchase specifically from this database, um, only to utilize it and kind of go to it first when you're looking to purchase something new, such as an AC. These products are designed to be more energy efficient, which ultimately save money over time.
Alana, do you include the link to the Green New York database in here somewhere?
No, but I can insert that, of
That would be great, thank you.
course. And then moving on to managing land, installing solar on half of Armenia's closed landfill is shown to pretty significantly reduce emissions. Um, this landfill, as you saw by the solid waste category, produces a lot of methane. The exact amount is kind of unknown, given that in the greenhouse gas inventory, it makes the assumption that only municipal waste was deposited over the length of its time of operation. Um, in actuality, the landfill changed hands a bunch of times and receives commercial and industrial waste as well. This would produce less organic material and lead to less methane that is like being reported. But using the land in this way kind of puts it to good use and also provides a good way of producing electricity and lowering emissions.
Yeah, we had a cohort talking about this idea, and I believe Vicky said she was interested in putting solar on the landfill, or at least researching it further. So, and also since then, one idea that's come up that has gained a lot of popularity because it's really low cost is putting biofilters in addition to the solar panels. So, you're kind of tackling two problems at the same time, right? You're generating electricity and making use of the landfill, but you're also reducing the methane coming out of the landfill too, which can be done apparently at a relatively low cost. So two ideas that definitely seem like they're worth further investigation.
Yes. And Beacon actually recently did a similar project, and they utilized BQ Energy, I believe. So they're able to lease the land and didn't have to pay any upfront costs for the solar installation, which definitely helps manage the financial aspects.
Yeah, it's immediate break even and generating annual revenue for the city every year. So it's considered a big win.
And just finally, creating some sort of pollinator garden on the landfill is another way to put the land to good use. This is great for just ecosystem health, and is also a low effort way of landscaping, which is also helpful for electricity and fuel usage. And then the final category is natural resource management. Um, this includes conducting an open space inventory. There was one completed in 2013. So updating this to gain a baseline understanding of Armenia's open space helps policymakers make more informed land use and conservation decisions. Okay. And then restoring, preserving, and acquiring natural areas is another kind of big consideration. Um, there's a project kind of going on currently under the sector that I was told about, where farmers are being assisted in purchasing the development rights to their properties. And this allows for reinvestment and transitions to more profitable methods of business in the future, um, including some sort of mention of this sort of strategy in the comp plan is another thing that could be helpful. Okay. And finally, converting to more of a low mow or like no mow maintenance schedule with landscaping could be useful. Land that's used less frequently could be mowed less, and land could be landscaped differently to reduce the amount that has to be mowed. This reduces landscaping expenses and uses less fuel.
Great. Thanks so much, Lana. This is a great list. I guess, so next steps here I see that they need to insert, someone from Armenia should insert the lead actor for each of these. So the person responsible for these actions, which obviously it's not something you can do. And maybe expand on the specifics, if there is more information specific to Armenia for these. But this is
Sure.
a really great list.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. Thank you. These are more options for tables that could be useful for the plan. And it also goes into the climate action science section, which is pretty extensive. It includes a lot of more general information about the relationship between CO2 and climate change, um, and how it affects our world, including different specific events like temperature, which is fairly applicable to this area. Um, it does have specific information about different regional and local risks that could be expanded upon. Um, and that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Alana. And just to confirm, this is all information that was in the ICLEI template. So it's provided by ICLEI. You haven't changed anything here, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay,
The climate section is the same as when it was provided to me.
perfect. Okay, this is great. Thank you so much. This is 40 pages of wonderful planning content. So, so great job. And I don't know if you want to just share the stakeholder engagement presentation just quickly. I know it's probably a little bit repetitive from what you just went over, but maybe just, to give an overview of really what the presentation is and what the purpose of it is, just in case the town wants to use that presentation for stakeholder meetings moving forward.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. Here, I can stop sharing the screen and then I can share the other. That's okay.
Perfect. Yeah, because now that there is a draft list of recommendations, it's it's obviously important to run these ideas by the actual people who are going to be responsible for implementing them, or those lead actors, because
Mhm.
obviously if this is just a bunch of ideas that no one has bought into, then it really won't matter. So I feel like that's why this presentation that you've created is so helpful, because it really it's an educational tool and will help get buy-in from those key stakeholders.
Yes. This presentation goes over some of the main points of the climate action plan, including sort of what it is, and what the process looks like. It also goes over some general inventory results, bringing back these two graphs, and breaks them down more specifically into the amount of CO2 and what percentage of total emissions they make up. Um, this then goes into what specifically a climate action plan is, and what the priorities were while developing it. And then it moves into the specific strategy recommendations and some accompanying tables showing their effects on reductions. Um, each chart has kind of a very brief overview of the strategies, how they can be identified, their emission potential, and a couple other notes about their implementation. There's also charts for some of the key strategies.
Sorry,
So,
Alana, can you go back to the last slide? Because I think it's important to point out those key
mhm,
performance indicators, because that is something that's required from the Climate Smart Communities program. And those are key measures to measure success. So, it's one thing to say, okay, we're going to lower emissions. Well, or by putting in, say, HVAC equipment, the key performance indicator will say, well, exactly how many systems are we going to replace? And exactly, or for instance, how much are we going to lower our utility bills by, or how much are we going to lower our greenhouse gas emissions by doing this action? So again, it's something where you can track progress more easily and measure success moving forward.
yep. And some of them are pretty simple, like for doing one, just the adoption of the policy is a completion of the strategy. There are of course like things you can do moving forward to utilize it, but for these purposes, that fulfills the key performance indicator. And then this chart shows with solar installation how much um, emissions are reduced. As you can see, it's pretty significant. Um, and
So this is
this,
helpful, like for instance,
mhm,
that slide in particular is helpful to show people, okay, if we did install solar panels here's what the result would be on our greenhouse gas emissions. And
Exactly.
that can be, I think, a pretty powerful tool to convincing people to take this action.
Yeah, the visuals I feel like are much easier to they're much more helpful than just kind of me explaining. Yeah. Um, and this sort of pattern kind of repeats for the next couple of sectors, where there's a table with the different strategies, their KPIs, and different notes, followed by a chart showing the kind of most impactful strategy and how it's modeled. And it's much more helpful, I feel like, to visually see this. Okay. So it goes through for the vehicle fleet, different options, such as replacing 3 pickup trucks with an electric option. And then for the land use space, I didn't have an accompanying chart for this because there wasn't kind of something that I could model as easily or that would be as impactful. But it does show um, the kind of final emission reduction scenario. This I know this looks a little bit weird, but this is in combination of installing solar panels on half the landfill and also using heat pumps in town hall. This doesn't mean that you have negative emissions necessarily. Um, it does mean that enough electricity is being generated to compensate for what's being used. Um, so there still are emissions happening from the vehicle fleet. Um, it just means that you have kind of an excess of something else.
Gotcha. And I know you
Mhm.
made some assumptions when you modeled this out. Are those in the notes section in ClearPath?
Yes, there.
Great. Okay. Fantastic.
Um, and for the solar modeling specifically, I went over that with Caroline, which was really helpful. So she helped me use the inventory and another tool to kind of figure out the numbers for that.
That's Caroline from ICLEI, right?
Yes,
Great.
yes. Um, and then the presentation moves into more specific co-benefits for these strategies, going over what they all mean and their corresponding signal. Um, once again, it goes by sector and by strategy, briefly describing them and then providing the corresponding symbol. I can share my notes for this, explaining my reasoning, if that would be helpful.
That would be great. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Uh, yes, and that is the same sort of process for the next couple of sectors as well.
Great. If you could just put anything you've done, including your notes, into the SharePoint, I think that's a safe place to have everything.
Great, no problem.
Awesome.
Okay. And that's everything that I have. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alana. I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.